another date Elder Frizzy always mentioned. Who knows what happened on that date? Oh, very good. I knew somebody would know that. That was the first comprehensive health vision. Ellen White had learned some things about health, the quitting tobacco and alcohol. Health vision, 6 vision. One of the things that was new was vegetarianism. And then, December 25, Christmas Day, 1865. Does anyone know what happened on that date? Somebody said it back there? Another health vision. And what did this vision direct God's people to do? That's right. This was the vision in which Sister White was shown how we need to have our own sanitariums. James White was sick at the time, and he was in a non-Adventist, non-Christian institution getting better. And at this time, Sister White was shown how Adventists needed to have their own institutions. Good historians today, Dr. Sutherland and Dr. McGann, both founders of Madison, and especially Professor McGann, ended up being very influential in the founding of Loma Linda. There's Sister White seated right in the middle. In 1909, she gave a lot of support to the work at Madison. All right, to her side there is her son Willie White, and her other side is Edson White and his wife Emma White. He was, by the way, a great pioneer medical missionary here in the South, mostly in educational work. Madison was one of the only institutions, I believe the only institution, in which Sister White had Wildwood's story. Now, getting back to some principles that we're trying to look at here. This is from Christ Object Lessons 326. Not more surely is the place prepared for us in the heavenly mansions than is the special place designated on earth where we are to work for God. Elder Frizzy loved to quote this one. We have a place in heaven, amen? God has a place for me, He has a place for you. And if you won't be there, this place is going to be empty. How sad. But just like there's a place in heaven, there's a place right here in this world where we are to work for God. The primary founder of Wildwood, that's him there with his first wife, Helen Frizzy, their adopted daughter Rebecca. He was born in 1906. While he was still in the womb, his parents had become Seventh-day Adventists. But because of their convictions to keep the Sabbath day holy and not to work, his father lost a good-paying government job. He tried many other ventures, farming and other things, to try to make ends meet. But those were before they had all the social programs that take care of us. And he told about how all they had to eat one time was wheat berries. Have you ever tried to eat wheat berries? Got into Loma Linda the very last year that they taught the medical evangelistic course. And then while he was there at the medical evangelistic course, taking his training in 1923 through 1926, he happened to meet this man right in the center. Now, somebody can tell me who that is? John Tyndall. Now, John Tyndall, you can read about his story. It's actually in the General Conference website where they have the materials and resources for doing urban evangelism. They have lots of after where she's medical missionary evangelists to work the cities from outposts to do company medical missionary work. The first one to answer that call was John Tyndall. He had a lot to learn, and like we all do, we make mistakes, but mistakes sometimes are our best educators. Eventually, though, he ended up having a lot of success in his evangelistic work. to the point where you can read it for yourself in the archives that are on the General Conference website, how in many of his churches where they followed up on his evangelistic efforts, not only did he baptize people by sometimes over 100, but the people remained years afterwards in the church, faithful. Between 70 and 90% of the converts stayed in the church. Sort of unheard of today. I remember when I was baptized in an event in which thousands of others were baptized. One particular church baptized about 1,000 people. But just not even a year later, you know how many people were left? Less than 100. Not even a year later. So how did he get such a great retention rate, 70 to 90%? Of course, like I said before, he learned from a lot of his mistakes, but he was trying to follow the vision. And when we follow the vision, when we follow God's way, he always promises to bring success. Where we're lacking success, it's usually because somewhere along the line we have gotten away from the vision that God has given. He was a medical missionary, evangelist, very successful in teaching health principles. Now we're going to come to this property that we're sitting on right now. February 27, 1936. That was the day that the deed was signed for the Institute of Health and Healing to own this property. By the way, the Institute of Health and Healing to this day still owns most of the property at Wildwood. Now, the primary founder of the Institute of Health and Healing was Dr. Hayward. He was a great pioneer medical missionary here in the South. He helped to start many other institutions, and he worked for many years in Chattanooga as a doctor. And one of my church members that lives not too far down the street, her husband helped to build one of the buildings on this campus before Dr. Hayward bought the property. She knew Dr. Hayward personally, and she remembered him as a very kind, very generous man, and she was very glad for the work that he was doing here on the Wildwood campus. Well, some things ended up happening with young Elder Frazee. Like I mentioned before, he met Elder Tyndall while he was in Loma Linda. Elder Tyndall gave him the opportunity to come be a medical missionary evangelist and train under him. There was just one problem. He was already offered an opportunity to go and to go through med school. Somebody actually offered to pay his entire way through med school. And that was his heart burden, to work in Mexico, to be a doctor, and to reach the Native Americans in Mexico. He could speak a little Spanish at that time, and that was a great burden on his heart. Well, if that's your heart burden and somebody offers to pay your way through med school, wouldn't that seem like a providence? Not everything that seems like a providence, though, is necessarily a providence. Of course, he decided to go with Elder Tyndall, and that's why we have this institution here. Learned as much as he could. He started his own company, and for many years they did itinerant preaching and evangelistic work in the West Coast and then down in the South. While they were in the West Coast, especially in Utah, they had the wonderful privilege to get a lot of counsel and nurture from Willie White, Ellen White's surviving son and the one that took over her writings after she passed away. Willie White gave them much counsel and much encouragement. At one meeting in Utah, he actually sat down with them as they were eating at the table, and he told them that this work that he was doing with his company, about 20 workers at the time, this was just the work that his mother had been calling for all those years, and she would be so pleased to see what they were doing. But there was a major concern that Willie White had, and you can read about that in those papers from the General Conference on John Tyndall. Willie White was a very old man by this time. He had been very experienced. He had seen many institutions start and many institutions fail by this time. And you can read the list, actually. He starts to list out one program and one institution after another that started, failed. And he had such a burden that something could be on a more permanent basis. He was really enthusiastic about what he saw in Elder Tyndall's program and Elder Frizzie's program. And he urged upon them to start something on a more permanent basis, to found an institution that could continue to teach medical missionary evangelists, especially since that program was no longer offered. So with great enthusiasm, they were open to the idea to look for property. It was especially that man in one of the previous photos I showed you, Neil Martin. He was the one that urged on Elder Frizee to look for some property. And it almost seems like in the records I've read, he almost had to pull his arm. But eventually, Elder Frizee consented, and he went to look for some property. And of course, he stumbled along through Chattanooga, blew a head gasket in his car, and while his car was in the repair shop, he went to go see a good friend of his, Dr. Hayward. Dr. Hayward, of course, had already started this institution early part of 1936. And things were not going quite as well as he had hoped. And there were many things he wanted to improve. When he heard about the good work that young Bill Frizee was doing, he said, well, why don't you come and use my property? He almost had to twist Neil Martin's arm as well. But eventually they came out to look at the property. And there's a list of just some of the, this is by no means complete, but this is one of the early lists of institutions in the South pre-Wildwood times. They came, Elder Frizee came to look at this particular property, and his first night here was Christmas Eve. First day was Christmas Day, 1941. So that's why we're celebrating 75 years since 1941. So guess what? Where's Michelle? Is she here? Well, you can tell Michelle that Christmas time, they need to have another 75th, right? But guess what? The actual charter wasn't signed until February, well, signed, but it wasn't filed away and completed until February 14, 1942. So next year at Valentine's, we need to do something as well. We need to tell Michelle she's got a lot of work to do. So they came here and arrived on this campus. And that is an early picture there. I picked this one because it has some snowflakes. That was the earliest aerial photo I could find of the Wildwood campus, and you'll notice some things that are missing. One thing that I immediately noticed, there's a lot of trees missing because this was mostly farmland. And you'll notice up there, Lake Edna is also missing, if you're familiar with Lake Edna. Christine Payne, who's over here in the corner, she's done a lot of research of when Lake Edna started. So I thought that was interesting. There's some later pictures. I believe these are from the 1980s, some aerial photos. Dr. Sutherland was also very enthusiastic about Elder Frizee and his group and their work, and he's quoted as saying this, that in the legal meeting for the corporation in Alabama, Dr. Sutherland said that he believed the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire of self-supporting work rests at Wildwood. And that was in the first year of their coming here. Now, what's the significance of the pillar of cloud and fire? Right. That's where you follow. Wherever that pillar of cloud and fire went in the wilderness with the children of Israel, they followed it. So in other words, Dr. Sutherland, who was in charge of the mother institution at Madison, for him to say that, he's sort of saying Wildwood's going to take on a mothering, pioneering role as an institution, not just one of many other sanitariums and institutions. This one is going to take on a parenting role to help many other institutions. There's so many stories, we don't have time to go through them all. There's going to be a tour of the campus after we're done with the presentation here. And there will be 2 vans. We can take 26 people with us in the vans, and we'll just show you around the campus, show some of the current usage of the buildings and some more stories and some history. Many of you here already are familiar with the campus. In that case, Sister Christine Payne here over in the corner, she's going to take a group up to Haskell Hall where the Wildwood Heritage Center is located. And if you just want to reminisce and look at pictures, you can drive up there with her to Haskell Hall and just reminisce, tell stories until lunchtime. And there'll be one group there and then two groups going on a tour throughout the campus. But let's test your history knowledge this time. Does anyone know what the significance of those two dates are? Okay, I finally stumped you. You're good historians, but I finally found one to stump you. Very good. Okay, very good. Brother Reynolds found that one out. God's Miracle Hospital, we like to call it. And yes, it was a hospital. I've just recently been able to verify that. Many miracle stories. I'll just share a very quick one. Of course, when they came here, December 25, 1941, what happened just 3 weeks previous to that? Pearl Harbor, World War II. And resources were all devoted to the war effort. So you didn't have money, you didn't have resources. People that knew what they were doing were shipped out to the war effort. So how are you going to start a sanitarium on this place right in the middle of a war? Miracle after miracle. Just one brief miracle. They had, through a set of miracles, been able to get the building up where they had the blocks laid. And now they need plumbing. They didn't have any plumbers. What did they do? They prayed. And what else did they do? They believed and they waited. It was Thanksgiving Day. I don't remember the exact year. It's not in the records. But Thanksgiving Day, a group of young men who were on vacation just happened to stop by. And they were looking around, and one of them said almost jokingly, "You wouldn't happen to need any plumbers here, would you?" And you know, they took their whole vacation off to help them with the plumbing. And that's just one of a whole series of miracles. And by the way, we've worked very hard, Christine Payne and many others have worked very hard on putting together a timeline of Wildwood. We've spent years of working on this, and scores of hours of research have been done to painstakingly look at the exact dates when certain things happened. Of course, a lot of it's subject to interpretation, just like the 4th of July. Declaration of Independence really wasn't signed on 4th of July. Interesting history trivia, but for the most part, this is about as accurate as we can get it. It's on here on this flash drive with a lot of other great resources. And if you would like that, just see me. If you got a laptop, I can load you up. And there's a picture with some of the early nurses. Now, who can tell me what that date was? Maybe I'll stump you this time. Oh, very good. Okay, I can't stump you. You're doing great. I'm sorry? The Newt Sanitarium and Hospital, the second one. The first building that was here, Evangelism, they had used that somewhat as a sanitarium, but the first official one was Mission Manor, which I showed before. This one, the second one, that's the groundbreaking on June 11. Many miracle stories went into that one as well. But once again, I'll just share one to whet your appetite. You can listen to the whole story, once again, on the flash drive here. It's also on our website, wdfrizzysermons.com. Now, Fred Callahan, he was helping to build this building, and he had with him his talents of being able to plaster and lay tile. Of course, in a hospital, especially in a surgery room, you have to have a special kind of tile, and you have to lay it down just about perfectly for it to pass state inspection. Yes, all kinds of issues that have to be factored in. Well, Fred Callahan, he sent up a prayer. They wanted to save money. They couldn't afford to hire a professional. and he laid down this tile, and people warned them not to do that because professionals that were very experienced often had to redo their work. And the inspector came in, and obviously he was very nervous, very nervous. But the inspector said he had to go out. He came back in, and he said, I don't understand it. There's something got to be wrong with my instruments here. But he's tested his instruments. He couldn't find anything wrong. He said he had never seen a job done so perfectly. Can angels help lay tile? Whatever our needs are, God can supply. And there's a picture of the sanitarium, and that was the hospital administrator and the primary fundraiser for that institution. Inspiring stories, and his wife, who's still with us today, Sister Jean Atherton, once again on this flash drive. We're going to end with Warren Wilson. He was the second president of Wildwood, founder of OCI, and he was also a great author, and as you learned last night, a great mentor to many people. He records that in 1981, Wildwood had started 75 affiliated projects, which, by the way, had just doubled in 4 years. Their first affiliated project was just 11 months after they first came here on the Wildwood campus. They had already another affiliated project down in Alabama. So Wildwood has grown extensively, and it has been a mother institution for scores of institutions. Of course, in 1983, that's when the need came to found OCI to help foster those many affiliated programs that could be under OCI umbrella rather than the Wildwood umbrella. And today, last time I checked, just this past week with OCI, they said they now have 115 affiliated projects. And I just saw a good friend of mine, a former student. Where did he go? Annex? Anyway, he's around here somewhere. But he is now starting a great work down in Haiti, and he's starting other projects. It's phenomenal what the Lord is doing. If he just gets some people that have the vision and have faith and are willing to sacrifice, God can do almost anything with us. And of course, this famous quote that was shared last night, we have nothing to fear for the future except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us in his teaching in our past history. And there's a picture of the Heritage Center now at Haskell Hall. Please up if you have photos, videos, kinds of great resources. Now we have just a couple minutes in understanding, but questions are good for me because I can go back and do some. And he was a pioneer opening up the work in the South. You can read about his story in From So Small a Dream, it's a book about how the Adventist work was started in the South. So yes, there was a fully functional institution. It just wasn't working as well as Dr. Hayward hoped, and that's why he signed the deed of the operations of the property over to Wildwood in January 15, 1942. He didn't, as far as I know, he did not know him personally. It was Neil Martin that knew Dr. Hayward, and that was the connection with Elder Frazee. Their first correspondence about this whole event was actually on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7, 1941, where he wrote to Elder Frazee, Neil Martin did, and told him about this meeting that he had with Dr. Hayward and how he had offered the property to Wildwood.
The big 70s,
So
80s.
you're asking about agriculture work and
Even here, there was, I think everybody wanted it, but some were stronger for the agriculture and some were stronger for the medical. Was there years where this, I know right now it's the best I've seen, the best I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, in years past, what medical really.
We'll end with that. And in the timeline, a whole section just on the agricultural work here at Wildwood, and we'll give you lots of resources on that. As far as what the record states, it was very successful in the early days. Much of it was farmland. It was actually a plantation. Then after slavery, from what I understand, when Dr. Hayward came, that many years, probably came here, there was already an orchard, and they tried to make all the food that they consumed with their workers and their patients to all come from the farm. I never found where they actually met that goal, but they almost did. And I'm sorry, but we're going to have to end with that question. There's lots of other interesting details. You can come to me and reminisce, tell me more details to help fill in the blanks. Right now we're going to take our tours.
Brought to you by Wildwood. Please visit our website.